born of war and shadows. Leningrad was still healing when Vladimir Putin entered the world on October 7, 1952. The bones of a broken city lay beneath cracked streets, whispers of siege and starvation still clinging to its stone walls. Winters were long, food was short, and silence was survival. In a dim communal apartment, shared by multiple families, the Putin family lived in a single room. No hot water, no privacy, just breath against frost-glazed windows. His mother, Maria, worked in a factory, quiet and steeled by years of war. His father, Vladimir Spiridonovich, a former submarine conscript wounded in the defense of the city, limped silently through their small space, pride stitched over his scars like threadbare fabric. They spoke little, not out of coldness, but because words had learned to hide in Stalin's Russia. Young Vladimir was the third son, but only he survived infancy. Perhaps that's why his mother clung to him with quiet intensity. He was not coddled. He was watched closely, as if his survival demanded vigilance. Outside, the streets were not kinder. Leningrad's alleys were arenas, ruled by gangs and stray dogs. Boys fought for respect, for cigarettes, for nothing at all. Putin, small and wiry, learned early that size meant little. Timing mattered. Precision mattered. Fear, when weaponized, was power. At school, he was distant, brilliant when interested, volatile when challenged. Teachers described him as hard to reach. He wasn't unruly. He was calculating. Friends were few. Trust, rarer still. Then came judo. He was 12 when he stepped onto the mat, barefoot and cautious. The dojo was a world of discipline and strategy, unlike the chaotic world outside. Here, movements had meaning. Balance dictated outcome, and the opponent's force could become a tool, not a threat. He found himself in the throws and falls. He liked the silence before a match, the way tension vibrated in stillness. Judo didn't require words. It demanded control of breath, of body, of emotion. In time, he earned a black belt, but more than that, he earned certainty. He didn't need to be the loudest in the room. He only needed to be the most prepared. Still, something darker simmered beneath the surface. Putin once wrote, "I understood that if you want to win, you have to fight to the finish in every fight, as if it were the last and decisive battle." That wasn't about judo. That was about life. By his teenage years, he had decided what he would become. Not a soldier, not a politician, but something quieter, more elusive. He walked past the KGB headquarters daily, gazing up at the cold granite with a reverence that felt like prophecy. No one noticed the boy with the cold eyes and tight fists, but he was already watching everything, and he would never stop. The KGB apprentice. By the early 1970s, Vladimir Putin had reshaped himself, body hardened through discipline, mind sharpened through quiet observation. But there was a longing in him that judo could not fulfill. Control, not just over self, but over systems. That hunger led him to the gates of the Soviet Union's most secretive institution, the Committee for State Security, the KGB. He was only in his early 20s when he applied. At first, they ignored him. Too eager, too visible. So he disappeared into the shadows, completing law school at Leningrad State University, studying German, refining the art of subtlety. Then one day, the invitation came. No ceremony, just a meeting, a question, and a choice. Training was brutal, not in body, but in soul. He was taught how to vanish into a crowd, how to make silence speak, how to make truth look like a lie. Loyalty was currency, information the weapon. Empathy was not erased, it was redirected, re-engineered into strategic empathy. The ability to understand a target, not feel for them. He didn't just obey. He absorbed. In 1985, he was stationed in Dresden, East Germany, a gray city locked behind the Iron Curtain, where the air was thick with secrets. Officially, he worked at a Soviet cultural center. Unofficially, he monitored dissent, recruited assets, protected the fragile illusion of Soviet order. He watched Western embassies, listened to whispers in universities, tracked movement behind veiled doors. His German was fluent, his manner forgettable, but he noticed everything. Then history cracked. It began with protests, students and workers flooding the streets of Leipzig and Berlin, chanting for reform, for reunification, for freedom. One night, as crowds surged toward the Stasi headquarters, Putin sat inside the KGB building, waiting for orders. The phone stopped ringing. Moscow had gone silent. The Soviet Union, his center of gravity, was paralyzed. The protesters came closer. Putin burned documents, shattered evidence, destroyed names. Everything he had built, protected, feared, was dissolving. He stood at the edge of history, a man trained to control chaos, now facing it in raw, human form. Later he would say, "Nobody lifted a finger to protect us. I realized that the system had failed." It wasn't just the end of the Soviet Union he witnessed. It was the end of belief in leadership, in invincibility, in permanence. The humiliation was personal, the lesson unforgettable. He returned to Leningrad a different man, disillusioned, but not defeated. He buried what he felt. He observed. He waited. If the system could collapse so easily, then perhaps a new one could rise just as quickly. But this time, he would not serve it. He would build it. The rise to power. The Soviet Union fell with a whisper and a thud. In its place, a broken Russia emerged, battered by inflation, lawlessness, and the greed of men who filled the vacuum with chaos. Gangsters replaced bureaucrats. Oligarchs carved the country into kingdoms. And the Kremlin, once the seat of cold power, now shook with drunken decisions and fading relevance. Vladimir Putin returned home to this disorder, wearing a bureaucrat's mask and despised memory. He slipped into the mayor's office in St. Petersburg, working under Anatoly Sobchak, a reformist with charisma, ideals, and enemies. Putin kept his head down, handling foreign investments, cutting deals, mastering the art of appearing useful while never revealing too much. He became known not for speeches, but for results. When Sobchak lost power, Putin vanished again, but not for long. He was summoned to Moscow, to the heart of a government that had lost its pulse. Over the next few years, he rose silently, first to the Presidential Property Directorate, then to the Federal Security Service, the modern heir to the KGB. His demeanor never changed. Calm, controlled, unreadable. Then came August 1999. President Boris Yeltsin, aging, ailing, and deeply unpopular, needed a successor. Someone loyal, someone manageable, someone the oligarchs could control. He chose Putin. The decision shocked Moscow. Outside political circles, few even knew his name. But Putin knew the game better than anyone. Appointed prime minister, he moved swiftly, decisively. When Chechen rebels launched attacks in Dagestan and bombs exploded in apartment buildings across Russia, the nation trembled in fear. Putin responded with fury. He vowed to wipe out the terrorists in the outhouse. And he did. With overwhelming force, he launched a second war in Chechnya, commanding the military like a seasoned general. His approval ratings soared. Then came New Year's Eve, 1999. In a surprise televised address, Yeltsin resigned, handing the presidency to Vladimir Putin. Just like that, the unknown had become the inevitable. In his first public statement as acting president, Putin spoke not with bombast, but with restraint. "I promise you that I will work honestly and devotedly." It sounded simple, but the shift was seismic. The people wanted order. Putin offered it. The elite wanted stability. Putin promised it. But behind the modest tone, a silent consolidation had begun. Rivals were sidelined. Media voices grew quieter. Institutions, once fractured, slowly bent toward one will. Putin wasn't filling a role. He was redefining it. He understood what Russia feared, chaos. And he offered the antidote, control. Every move was calculated. Every speech, deliberate. He wore power like armor and made silence his signature. The boy from Leningrad was now the man at Russia's helm. But the true transformation hadn't happened yet. That would come after power tasted permanence. The president and the power. Power did not change Vladimir Putin. It revealed him. As the new millennium unfolded, he set about restoring what he believed Russia had lost: respect, discipline, strength. He moved like a tactician, reshaping the government, reclaiming industries, and centralizing control beneath his calm, steely gaze. The oligarchs who once thought him manageable soon discovered otherwise. Some were exiled, others imprisoned. The message was simple: loyalty was not optional. Television networks, once loud with criticism, began to echo one voice. Dissent shifted from opposition to offense. Behind a facade of democracy, a different architecture was taking root, one built not on ballots, but on fear, loyalty, and calculated strength. But Putin did not govern through rage. He governed through narrative. To the world, he crafted an image: the hunter, the soldier, the bare-chested symbol of masculinity and resolve. To Russians, he became the protector, guarding the homeland against foreign humiliation and internal decay. The wounds of the 1990s had not healed, and he pressed against them gently, reminding his people of the pain, then offering himself as the cure. Yet with every year, the stakes grew higher. Chechnya was pacified, but at a devastating cost. Journalists disappeared. Political rivals fell, some literally. Accusations echoed in the West: authoritarianism, corruption, aggression. But inside Russia, Putin's grip only tightened. He amended the constitution. He returned as president after a brief hiatus, and when terms ended, he simply rewrote them. Then came Crimea. In 2014, Russian troops moved into Ukrainian territory without insignias, without warning. Within weeks, Crimea was annexed, a geopolitical shock heard across the globe. The West condemned him. Sanctions followed. But in Russia, he was celebrated. Approval soared. Once again, Putin had avenged humiliation with decisive strength. The more pressure the world applied, the more defiant he became.